So many people assume that as you get older, you just feel less energized, and this is just a side effect of aging. But it is way more complicated than that. It is connected, but not for the reasons you might think. The reasons why we feel worse and worse as we get older is because our choices are compounding over time, over the years. And if you think of it like a bathtub, we can put whatever we want into this bathtub. We can put in cheeseburgers, we can put in soda, we can put in water, we can put in vegetables. Eventually this bathtub is going to get full, and it takes longer to get full for some than others depending on your choices. But when this bathtub gets full, we have a choice. We can either figure out what is clogging the drain, or we can mop up the floor where it's spilling over, which is what modern medicine does. It mops up the floor time and time again with medications, but we really want to look at the root cause, because when that bathtub does get full, we start seeing these symptoms present, like fatigue and lack of sleep, insomnia, things like that. So we need to ask the question of why. Our body is doing its best, it is working so hard to keep us going, but eventually it's kind of exhausted, and it gets to a point where it expresses these symptoms to us to communicate to us that it needs some help. And you can choose to acknowledge that, or you can choose to ignore that and make excuses. So today I want to talk about why your body is crying out for help and what it might be crying out for, so that you can address your needs and feel better. So one of the main reasons why these symptoms start to express themselves is because our gut is getting more and more compromised. And there's a number of reasons for this. Medications can definitely alter our gut microbiome and that balance between good and bad bacteria in our gut. Birth control especially, it gets clogged up in the small intestine, and that influences the environment of our gut. And so when we don't have these good gut bugs, they are our first line defense. They are protecting us. They are a key part of our immune system, helping us make neurotransmitters, helping us to break down our foods and absorb the nutrients from our foods and eliminate toxins from our body. So pretty much impacts every system. It does impact every system in the body. So if our gut is unwell, we are not going to feel good. And it takes time for these to really get out of hand, the bad guys versus the good. And another reason why our gut really gets compromised is because we're eating foods that damage it, that cause inflammation in the gut, which cause the gut lining to start to wear away. So our gut lining is a semi-permeable membrane, which means that it's a thin layer, and that is designed so that good things can get out and get to our cells to energize us, and bad guys stay in so that we can excrete them. And when this lining gets compromised and gets leaky, then the bad guys are getting out, and we're not able to get the good nutrients and vitamins to our cells so we can use them for energy. And this is really the beginning of autoimmune disease, because when our immune system is constantly alert, because these bad guys are constantly getting through, then it is overactive and it is overreactive, and it begins to attack everything, good cells, bad cells. And that's why our thyroid is one that can really become compromised, because it can't differentiate between, proteins that aren't supposed to be there and your healthy thyroid hormones. So our gut lining in it, that is really, pesticides and herbicides are a big one. So if you are not buying organic, then you are getting pesticide residues on your food. These are chemicals. And again, it's that compound effect. Sure, the first few years of eating this way, you're not going to feel it, but over time, that damage, it gets worse and worse and worse, to the point where we do start to see these symptoms surfacing. And so it is really important that we are aware of what's on our food. So if you can't afford organic, then be sure to wash your produce well. If you can go to the farmer's market and get fresh, that is ideal, if there's a local farmer. And I would really recommend that you check the Dirty Dozen list. So EWG, the Environmental Working Group, they test produce every year and come up with this Dirty Dozen list. And these are the dirtiest produce that you can buy. And so if You can't buy all organic. Try at least to buy these 12 things organic whenever possible. And an easy way to think of it is anything where you're eating the exterior. So think strawberries, think kale, peaches, anything like that, then you're gonna be absorbing more of those pesticides and chemicals. Versus if you're buying produce where there is an exterior layer that you're gonna be removing, like a banana or avocado, that layer is adding some protection for your food so that you're not ingesting as many of these chemicals. So check out the Dirty Dozen list, try to buy organic. And I realized that the whole medication piece is a little more complicated than the pesticide and organic produce piece. So we will talk about that more. But the next one I want to touch on when it comes to your gut health is, again, those foods that are compromising your gut and causing it to become leaky. There is the pesticides, the things that sprayed on our foods. There's the antibiotics that conventional livestock is pumped with, which these antibiotics, they kill bacteria. And when I talk about our gut microbiome, that's a balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria. But these antibiotics don't differentiate between good and bad. They just wipe it all out. And so if we're eating conventional livestock, then we are also compromising our gut microbiome. So if you can find someone local, if you can maybe buy like half a cow or something with your family and then put it in a deep freezer from a local farmer, then you're gonna have a much better source and you're gonna know what they're using to take care of their livestock, if they're pumping them full of antibiotics and growth hormones, if they're eating an unnatural diet. You wanna know what you're eating because you eat what your food eats. And I know buying that small little 1 pound package of grass-fed organic beef at Whole Foods for $10, it's not sustainable for everyone. But there is always a way. So do some research, try to figure out how you can get a better source for your foods. And Imperfect Produce is one that I've been using more recently and I've been really happy with, and they have an organic option there. So check that out. This is going to be big for your gut. And then it's just simply what you're putting in your body, like the quality of the foods. For example, if you are eating gluten, I know that we hear about gluten a lot, but there's a reason for that. And it's because bread is not what it was when our ancestors ate it, or even our grandparents, right? It wasn't sprayed with as many pesticides and herbicides, and they weren't just overproducing, which left these crops constantly depleted. They weren't genetically modifying these plants, which our genetics are not designed to break down properly. And that's the problem, is our bodies aren't breaking these down properly, and it's causing an inflammatory response, and that inflames our gut. That causes our gut barrier to get leaky. That causes us to feel like shit. So that is one that we just can't ignore. And some people are more sensitive to gluten than others. Everyone's on a spectrum. So someone who has celiac disease, they're very sensitive to it and it really impacts them. But other people are on the lower end of the spectrum, but it impacts everyone negatively. But for some people, it takes longer for that bathtub to get full versus others, that bathtub is full immediately and your body is telling you immediately, like, this is not working. So if you can just gradually try to find some gluten-free alternatives. I know that Aldi's has some great, like, brown rice spaghetti, which is really good. They have their G-free living or live G-free, whatever line. They've got a lot of great options, and I would just really suggest that you start exploring these. And you don't have to commit to going 100% gluten-free tomorrow, but just gradually start introducing some alternatives to see if you and your family like them, and then maybe they could just be a permanent swap, and then you can just start giving your body a break from these toxins and invaders, which will slowly lower that inflammation and allow your body to heal and do what it does best, which is to make us feel good and feel optimized. So number one, number one I want you guys to really think about is getting your gut healthy. And if your body there are symptoms like you're experiencing bloating after meals, if you experience gas, if you experience constipation or irritable bowel, this is your body communicating to you that something is off. You're probably eating things that don't agree with you. And this is where I really dive in and get super specific with my clients, because for some people, you know, even tomatoes, nightshades don't agree. And while this is assumed to be a healthy food, it's not healthy for everyone. For some people, it is actually very inflammatory and an irritant. And so this is how I customize my clients' protocols based on their genetics, if they want to go that deep, based on their family history, based on their symptoms. I can do like a cluster analysis and find out, like, it is very likely that you are more sensitive to moldy foods like corn, like peanuts, like coffee and chocolate. And so why don't we give it a try and see if you feel more energized when we eliminate these things. And so customizing it and realizing that there's really no one size fits all approach is really key for optimizing your life and your health, and, you know, realizing your potential mentally, physically, and everything in between. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. Just remember, baby steps. You know, maybe it's taking that extra couple of minutes when you get home from the grocery store to rinse off your produce. You can get a great fruit and vegetable rinse from Sprouts or Trader Joe's, or you can probably even make your own. Maybe trying to explore the imperfect produce option, having these things delivered to your doorstep, right? Maybe it is just calling up a friend who you know buys like a half a cow every year and seeing, like, could you go in on this next time and know where your food is coming from. So I hope this video is helpful for you guys. I'd love to hear what you think. And so please leave a comment, like it, share it, and I hope that you can start your healing journey today.